Welcome to part one of the Minds of the Future. My name is Anna Sjöström Douagi, and I'm the host of this roundtable discussion between young minds in science and Professor Sir David MacMillan, Nobel laureate in chemistry from 2021. And this is taking place at the Nobel Prize Museum during the Nobel Week 2022 in Stockholm. We move here to one of the first questions, and one of the largest challenges for the next generation is the climate crisis. This is something that children and youth worry about all around the globe, and that's something that youth take very seriously and also shoulder responsibility to solve. To be able to solve the climate-related threats, we have to create more opportunities for young people to gain skills and knowledge required to come up with solutions to solve the climate-related challenges we stand before. 30% of youths in Africa and Europe stated that lack of knowledge and skills was the biggest challenge to transit into an economy that respects and protects the environment. So, how can we empower today's youth and inspire them towards STEM and STEM innovation so that they can take on where we are today and create the future solutions to today's climate issues? Someone wants to start? Maybe Xiaoqing?
Right. So I think especially because climate change is such a prevalent issue for STEM and in the future. So I think one way to empower youth now is to probably update the way that STEM is being taught in schools to kind of include more climate issues. So I'm not sure how it's done elsewhere, but at least in Singapore, in our A-level syllabus, especially in chemistry, we do have quite a lot of focus on like climate issues. For example, learning about how CFCs deplete the ozone layer, or like how catalytic converters work. But I felt that more like focus can be put onto these climate issues in like physics lessons or chemistry lessons or biology lessons, because it's important for youth to be like exposed to this early, and so that even if they don't become scientists in the future, like everyone is aware of how their actions impact climate change. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point that you made with including it in more subjects. What I think would also help maybe, well, for the youth who have education accessible, I think that's also a big point. It's not accessible everywhere, but for the youth who are as privileged as that, to not only include problems and also maybe aspects of the climate crisis in different subjects, maybe also economics, politics, or even languages, to also focus on problem-based learning, where you can try and tackle a certain problem during your lessons and work on solutions with just basic knowledge, because I think that really motivates you and in your way of in your education and maybe your way of research later, if you start to find little bits of if you can like tackle or if you can find parts of solutions with just really basic knowledge.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I mean, I could echo Xiaoqing's statement that we need to focus on the early education and grassroots of the sustainability and how we learn about everything. And as a medical engineer, I mean, I suffer from a bit of climate anxiety research, where I always think, what's the point of doing my research if there's these massive problems going on in the background? I'm always thinking about, all the issues that we have. So to give my perspective, I've always had an interest in kind of making my project sustainable or going down that direction, but I had to seek them out personally. It wasn't offered to me like as a student. It was you can do this project, and I would kind of push it towards a sustainability viewpoint. And we, as Xiaoqing was saying, we focus on how we deal with fossil fuels and all the negative outcomes, and we should really focus on the positivity and what we can do with the alternatives, and how we can look towards being more positive on the sustainability front, what we can do, the possibilities. I think there was a really good example recently in 2018, the Day X in Cape Town, where they were running out of water, and the whole city came together. It was a great example of decisiveness and togetherness, and the whole city came together and showed what we can do as humans in extreme circumstances and pressure. But we shouldn't have to get to that point. We should be able to change the systematic kind of way that we teach people to prevent this, and kind of have more education pathways towards sustainability. And I think promoting a positive image is really important.
it's interesting what you say. You talk, all of you talk about education in different ways, accessibility to education, but also to bring in this sustainability angle in projects, and also this having many disciplines attacking these issues. David, what education, accessibility to education, do you think is the ground for solving these problems in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that has to be the case. If you think about our understanding, both locally or broadly, generally, it has to be based on our knowledge, our understanding of what are the problems, whether it's climate change, whether it's in the medical fields, whether it's in almost any sort of form of topics that society generally cares about. We have to have broad education of it. I absolutely agree that I believe this was a completely perfect statement. That in, for example, chemistry, physics, other areas, we don't talk about climate change in the ways that we can think about how we can overcome this for the future. There are actually aspects of this which are being tackled right now, I think, in a very positive way that most people don't know about. There's also many aspects of it which are not being tackled, and we don't do we do a terrible job of educating people as to the key problems associated with climate change and the absolute scale of it, which is so enormous. That's one of the biggest problems. My personal viewpoint is that we can and should educate many people as to not just having a sentiment about caring about climate change, but having a sentiment about why we have to push politicians, governments, people broadly to provide the resources to tackle the major problems of it, not the part about, I'm going to know how to put my can in a different recycling bin. That's different from actually understanding how do we actually scrub carbon out of the atmosphere and how do we actually move towards renewables, which are much more important and bigger topics. But there's absolutely, you can feel it, there's a sentiment amongst, especially young people, that we have to address this. And I think that's why it's so important that we get that education right.
I mean, these are really important points that you are raising. And I think when you talk about education in climate change and sustainability, it's also new knowledge that takes some time to get into the school and education system, as we saw also with health and the pandemic, where new science was developing in front of our eyes, and then to get that into education, it's quite difficult. But there was apparently a quote from you, David, saying that science is supposed to be about having fun. It is not supposed to be about intimidating people.
Right.
I think we are a little bit coming into this education and also attracting young people to go into a scientific career. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on this? Why do you think it's important to talk about this?
I think it's number one component of this is it's important to be, climate change, for example, is a very serious issue. And so it's almost a case that people feel like you cannot talk about this without being incredibly serious. At the same time, you have to motivate people to care about either doing research, moving into that area, and actually being involved with these substantial questions. The number one way that you can get young people or any people excited about any topic is engagement, where they feel excited about what they're doing. If you can be involved and be excited about it, which I would say is having fun, when you're excited, you're having fun, then your own pull towards that area is so much stronger. As scientists, and this will maybe go back to scientific communication, we don't do a fantastic job of engaging, particularly the youngest people as they're learning a subject, for them to realize how much excitement, how fun it is to learn about that area. If anything, we do a bad job. We make it seem uninteresting or dry. And I think this idea of young people who can understand that doing research, being at the forefront of a scientific field is extraordinarily exciting. That is something we have to do a much better job of conveying to people to get many more people driven to get involved.
This excitement when you actually make an experiment and you find data that you know that no one published, so maybe no one else has ever heard about that. It's quite a nice feeling, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for this, I'll give you an example. This year, we took 6 high school kids into my lab for the summer. And the first thing we did with them is we had them make a molecule that had never been made in the universe before, each of them. And they couldn't believe it. They were like, really? This has never happened before? Like, yeah. And to take a 16-year-old and tell them they just created matter that's never existed in the universe before is so eye-opening for them. And you realize what you're trying to do is to show them that you can get to the frontier of the field really, really quickly. And it actually doesn't take that much buy-in or intellectual knowledge to get there. And I think conveying that to everyone is really important.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you around the table here, do you agree with David, or do you have any own experience of this on how to make this? And do you also want to say something to the young people who are watching?
Yeah, so I would like to share. Yes, I think it's important to make science accessible for youngers, because we see science, when people talk, we see it as really serious stuff, and something serious, it doesn't really go along with young kids, young youth, and we should break this boundary by making science more accessible. For example, that's really inspiring to hear that you took 16-year-olds to your lab, because from where I come from, it's Lithuania, and we don't do that. Science is usually just for the school, and you get to learn, but you don't get to experience and to show your passion and share your passion with it. And I think that accessibility should be the key how to encourage young people, because we have the passion and we have ideas. We see that because we need to live in that world that comes, I guess, after you. So we have the passion and we have the ideas, and we would like to get the knowledge and the place where we could grow, and don't wait for, 30 years old, because we can do it now.
Great, thank you so much. So more young people into the labs. Bertram.
Yeah, I think too that, David, you're really hitting the nail on the head when you say that science has to be fun. I think we have to aim to make it engaging, because it is, I know I can, and I know 99.9% of people cannot use their whole life, spend it on something that they do not feel it's worth it, is engaging, and is something they want to actively partake in. If you don't feel like that, it's never gonna happen. And therefore, it's essential that we make science not just practical and have a real world impact, but fun. I'm not sitting here today because I'm some smart genius who knows everything about computers and stuff like that. I'm sitting here today just because I couldn't give up on programming. I think it's every time I don't know what to do, I sit down and I do some of it because I love it. I love doing it. When I get home from this week, tired after a whole week with a lot of wonderful people and wonderful experiences, that's probably going to be the first thing I sit down and do again, because I feel my passion. I burn for it, and we have to make young people feel that about science, because if we do that, they will be able to tackle the problems of tomorrow.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's a fantastic thing that you are lifting the passion. So every one of you, you're sitting on chairs from the Nobel Prize Museum, and under them there are signatures from laureates. So you're actually sitting on laureates. But one of the chairs is saying that follow your passion. And I think that is something that really, from many laureates, I hear that you really... There is a question. You almost get the prize because you're the most curious people in the world. Mm-hmm. That's something that connects you. You don't give up on a question, and you're really passionate to find an answer on that and to work on that.
Yeah, I can't speak for all the other laureates. I can speak for myself and say that it was, going back to Bertram's statement, I think it has to be, I always tell young people, sample lots of different areas so that you can find the thing you burn for, so that you can find the thing you care about. But the only way you can do that is to try lots of different things. But once you get it, it sort of almost speaks to you. I always tell people, I didn't choose organic chemistry. Organic chemistry chose me, because once I started reading about it, it just felt like it was almost like breathing, just reading about it, because it spoke to me in ways that other subjects could not. I know there's lots of physicists around the table. I was so bad at physics. It's amazingly bad. But chemistry and organic chemistry was just something that was really, it really got to me. And I think I tell lots of people, try and find that for yourself. And maybe sounds like some of you have already got there. And that's fantastic. So finding that part is so critical for driving yourself forward. It's the passion. It's the thing you do when you want to do it, as opposed to feeling like you should do it. That's the part which is critical.
Rebecca?
It's just something you said with trying out different parts and different subjects. I think, yes, that's very critical in the whole process of developing an interest or a fascination with something. But I also see a kind of a problem, especially when it comes to younger people, so even younger than us, children. Because how do you make science accessible to them? I think that's something we may need to work on. Really deciding on, offering children the opportunity to get into science at an early age. So to figure fun ways to get to know certain topics. I think it goes a lot into exploring and discovering things on their own. Which I think could be a start to really light that scientific fire or passion.
Hector.
Yeah, so tying back to what Sir David was talking about, how you can basically lead your own research. And I think an important part about feeling engaged in science, in research overall, is just having leadership of your own question, right? So the way science is taught, at least in Mexico, you see it a lot in early education where it's basically this entire process of learning factoids. And it's interesting, right? I mean, in biology, who doesn't know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell? But we should shift the conversation from what is a cell to how we can use cells to harness societal progress, right? So it's in this conversation, in this process of basically learning facts to applying these facts, to creating applied science, that I think we can harness a lot of excitement and a lot of progress in the field. It's just this entire process of not seeing yourself just as a bystander in the process, but as an actor of change, right? That you can use science, that you can use biology, any field you can use to your own intention. And it's just endless opportunities, endless manipulation, endless things we can create for good. And as long as you're, the author of your own question, as long as you have this relentless curiosity to keep asking, to keep researching, I think that's the clue, to basically continue solving problems, to solve societal problems with science.
And we have a last comment from Noelia before we move on.
I definitely support your argument, and I think we really need to convey this message to the rest of the youth in the world, that we shouldn't be scared of science, because when I was growing up, I thought that science was something that only people older than me could do. But as you grow up and with initiatives like this, you realize that, for instance, I'm sitting in a table with a lot of young people, young scientists that have done amazing projects. And I think that's also a message that we need to convey, that yes, young people can do science, and great science.
Thank you so much. So many valuable inputs. And I think what we'll hear is that education is really key to the future. And for everyone of you who is listening and watching, I think it's also key to remember that to become a Nobel laureate is not that you are born into a super smart genius. Sorry, you're a very smart genius, but that you find your passion, your interest, and that you really work hard on exploring, and that you almost get captured by that, so that you don't want to do anything else almost, because that becomes almost like your hobby. So thank you all for contributing to a better and brighter future through science. To our viewers, you can continue this conversation on how to make our future more sustainable and brighter by downloading our free-of-use appendix on the website to bring to your classroom, science club, family, or friends' dinner. Thank you so much.